Yeah, that got my attention. That thing took forever to stop. You know, even though we're only running 35-inch tires and a little 3-inch lift, this thing could still use some serious help in the braking department. You know, this performance rotor kit is going to be the perfect solution for someone that just wants to improve their odds of survival in a panic stop, or even in a steep downhill low range situation without breaking the bank. So if the full meal deal that big brake kit has to offer is going to be just a little over the top for your needs, the performance rotor kit is going to be the perfect fit. You know, rather than risking my life and wasting your time driving this all the way back to the shop to put the performance rotor kit on, I'm thinking we'll just do it right here. I mean, if I can put this kit on out here in the middle of this field, surely you can do it in your driveway. This 35-inch tire is enough that you can just barely get it off the ground with that stock jack. If you're not under perfect conditions, it's not going to get a 35 off the ground. What we're going to do is start with these 13mm caliper bolts, and if you're lucky, they'll come out. If you're not, that whole pin's going to spin on you. If it does, no biggie. They give you a little flat to put a hand wrench on there. Put a 15 on it and breaks it loose, and out we go. They've got a little Loctite on them. Once you break that off, you're good. Same story here. All right, with both those out of there, we can go ahead and swing this caliper right out of the way. Look at those disc brake pads. If you don't have a lot of meat on that pad, now is a perfect time to just replace them. Just get it done. You'll have new pads, new rotors, and you'll be good to go. These are in great shape. They give you that little wear indicator on them. You can see how much more material we've got before that slot comes into where it's almost into the pad. We want to make sure we don't get any contamination on the surface of these disc brake pads. So don't touch them with oil or even the oil from your hands. Just keep those nice and clean so you have a good surface. And you put it back together, because in this case we're going to be reusing these pads. Just pop those out. Next up, we're going to remove these two caliper mount bolts. They're 21mm and they are tight. These things are torqued to about 110 foot-pounds. So before I take this caliper mount clear off, I'm just going to go ahead and start a nut on there just so that rotor doesn't come off and wind up on my foot. On this kit, what we did is just made this bracket taller so that it really just moves the caliper out away from this rotor. That gives us more clearance so that we can go to a larger rotor. By going to a larger rotor, it's just a leverage thing. It's just like this little cheesy ratchet that I have here. It's designed so that you can use it in a tight space and get your movement on it, but if it's too hard to go, just extend it out. Now all of a sudden you've got all kinds of leverage and you can get a lot more power out of it. Okay, what we need to do now is we're just going to transfer all of the hardware from this original mount onto our new one. It's pretty easy. Just have a little boot on them and just slide that pin out. This one's pretty oiled up and greased up. That's really good. You need to make sure yours are as well. So before you put yours back into this new one, just get you some disc brake caliper grease. It's synthetic stuff. It's kind of a high temperature grease. Never hurts to have this stuff well lubricated. There's really quite a noticeable difference between the two rotors. It's quite a bit bigger. The rotor's been drilled with 2 sets of holes, 5 on 5 and 5 on 5.5. Once you've got the rotor on, when you put your safety lug nut back into place, just throw it onto one of those lower lug studs. That way, it'll just hold that rotor up, straight up and down for you, so you don't have to fight it while you're putting that caliper bracket on. Before we install that new caliper mount bracket, we're going to just transfer these anti-rattle clips. We're just going to move them from one position straight onto the next one. So we just need to put them in the same spot so you don't have to think about it. This is something that's really good to do. If you ever get kind of a squeak going in the rear end of your Jeep that you can't find it, you think it's in your suspension or whatever, check these little clips. Go ahead and put a torque wrench on them. We're going to run it up to 110 and just lay into them. You don't have a torque wrench, just tighten those things hard. Before we put these pads in, I just like to put some, just grease up the very ears on those pads, just so they don't get any squeak out of them. Carefully, so you don't get grease all over the pads from your hands. Just kind of be careful about it. You can put that pad into place. We'll do the outer one. Do the same drill. Just grease it up. This outer pad's just a little more tricky to get in. We can start that bottom ear first and just work it in there. It slides right into place. Final step is to reinstall that caliper. Now you'll notice that you may have a little more thickness in the new rotor than the other one, so as you put it on, just kind of give it a little push and you can compress that piston back into the caliper a little bit and they'll slide right on. We're going to do the same drill with our Loctite on them. Our 13 and our 15. And just snug those up. We're actually done. All we got to do is put a tire back on it. We don't need to bleed the brakes. We don't need to do anything else. It's pretty simple. The only downfall of going with the Performance Rotor Kit is if you don't happen to have a 17-inch wheel, it's not going to go back over the top of it. Luckily, most of the JKs have 17s on them. Next time we get the wild hair that we ought to do an install out in the middle of nowhere, I think we're going to have to rethink it. I feel sorry for you guys doing these things out in your driveways. I'm going to go back to the shop. But before we do, let's go see how this stops.